Only a year in power, and Egypt's President Mohammed Morsi is seeing his popularity diving and is facing demands to step down. Matt, your story says that Egyptians are bracing themselves for an explosive Sunday coming up. I assume we're not talking about fireworks here.
Yeah, right now, at the risk of being too dramatic, the air is really redolent with tension and frustration. And you can see, just going out into the streets, just how much anger there is out there. There are cars that are queued up for blocks and blocks waiting for gasoline because there's been a shortage of petrol throughout the country. There's frequent blackouts throughout major cities, especially in some of the poorer areas. And all of this is going to be playing into protests that are planned for Sunday that are demanding that Morsi step down.
But Morsi was very popular when he came to power a year ago, wasn't he?
There's been quite a transformation because when Morsi came to power, he was the first really democratically elected president of Egypt, really ever. And he beat out a rival who was from the former regime, the regime of Hosni Mubarak that was toppled in February 2011. So he had a lot of accumulated goodwill, and he had the trust of some very disparate political forces throughout Egypt. Some of the secular liberals who had campaigned very hard to remove Mubarak from power, and some of the hardline Islamist conservatives who saw Morsi as the best chance for Islamic rule in Egypt, because Morsi, of course, was a leader in the Muslim Brotherhood organization.
Okay, so what's gone wrong? I mean, we've seen his popularity, drop like a stone. It was something in the low, it was up in 79, 80%. It's now down in the low 30s. What's gone wrong?
The real problem is not so much what Morsi has done, it's what he hasn't done over the last year. He hasn't been able to fix a lot of the problems that were really, really frustrating Egyptians, like these fuel crises, the problems with education, poverty issues. All of this stuff is still problematic here. But then he also way exceeded his authority on several occasions when he announced a constitutional declaration that basically gave him more power than the judges who were trying to check his power. So he's arrogated himself to levels that the activists and the Islamists who had put him into power didn't find appropriate. And at the same time, he hasn't responded with any sort of benefits, with any kind of anything to show for that new level of power that he was able to achieve last November.
And briefly, Matt, I mean, obviously, anytime you talk about Egypt, you have to look at it through the focus of the armed forces. They obviously ruled, the country after the topple of Mubarak. Where do they stand on this?
Well, they gave an ominous declaration on Sunday saying that they would be planning to intervene for the sake of the country because Egypt was going through some dire straits right now. The Islamists interpreted that as that they will protect the Islamists. The activists interpreted that as they will step in to remove the Brotherhood from power. It was a very obviously deliberately ambiguous statement. So it's not quite clear exactly where the military stands. We know that the Brotherhood was able to shunt them aside last year. So it's unclear whether or not they're going to intervene, and if they do, on which side they'll intervene on.
Well, I guess we'll find out on Sunday. Matt, thank you very much indeed.